Now, if you speak to any smart multimillionaire about the 2007-2008 recession, they will tell you that it was one of the most profitable periods of their entire life. And that's because wealthy people know how to weather the storms of a recession, and more importantly, use it as an opportunity to get filthy rich. Now, just being very honest with you, you can't afford not to watch this video, because over the space of the next 5 years, you are either going to change the trajectory of your entire life, or you're going to have a very painful half a decade. And if you watch this video, hopefully you'll be on the right side of history. Now, with that intense intro out the way, let's just evaluate the situation. Stock market is down double digits, crypto is getting slammed, and GDP is down first quarter. If we repeat that in second quarter, then we are officially in a recession. Now, these are numbers that you can look at and are being presented to you, but what I'm actually more interested in is the narrative right now in mainstream media. And I think the narrative actually gives us much clearer of an indication that we're actually in a recession than the numbers itself. Now I'm going to break this down into two sections. The first portion is going to be all about what businesses you should be in right now and what businesses you should avoid at all costs. Next, we'll talk about investments, what to do when it comes to investing, and what I'm personally doing with my $10 million investment portfolio. Now, the first thing that you need to do ASAP is start a business. Now, I know that might sound crazy during a recession, but hear me out. During a recession, the best thing that you can do is have cash on hand, so that way you can buy assets at dirt cheap. Now, also during a recession, having a job working for a company is a massive risk. You risk being laid off. This is why you need a lean business, so that way it can provide you with cash flow in order to invest as well as live comfortably. The biggest key is to start a business with very little to zero startup cost. Do not start something like my software company, for example, where I have a team of 20 employees. That is not a smart idea during a recession. Also, do not get into businesses where you need to buy physical stock or product ahead of time. That's too risky during a recession. And lastly, do not get into businesses that are sort of nice to haves, not necessities. You need to understand that there are certain businesses that are absolutely bulletproof during a recession because they are necessities, whether that be services for businesses that they'll never cut off, or whether that be stuff for people's personal lives. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. During recessions, tobacco companies, so, people that smoke cigarettes and tobacco related products, they actually make far more money. So as I said, during these times, it's very important that you start a business that is practical, right? That's a necessity for companies or people rather than just a nice to have. And it's also important that this business is online as well as remote. Now, I don't have time to go over it in this video, but I actually spent days researching in order to come up with a money-making matrix. Now, this matrix evaluates every single online business model there is out there and uses a scientific formula in order to get to the bottom of which one is the best to start in the current market conditions. Now, when I uploaded that video, people have absolutely gone crazy for it since, so I'll leave it as the first line in the description, so you can check it out if you want to, and if you're interested in making sure that the next 5 years, as I said, you're on the right side of history. So now that we've covered what to do in a recession, which is make sure that you have a lean, streamlined, online-based business, we can now get into what to do with your investments, and more importantly, what I'm personally doing with my own 8-figure investment portfolio. Now, in order to know what to do, I think it's best to look at narrative. Now, if you look at mainstream news, sort of, well, maybe not the last, few months or so, but pretty much for the past 2 years, they're like, there's no inflation, or it's transitory, just a whole load of lies and excuses for all of the money printing. Because quite frankly, this wasn't true. There was rampant inflation, except not in CPI, Consumer Price Index, which we'll get onto in a second, which is sort of what they use as a barometer for inflation, except it only counts like a few certain things and excludes all financial services, assets, etc., etc. So there was rampant inflation, except it was going into assets. I mean, the past 2 years has just been incredible for anyone who is investing in crypto, housing, stocks. Well, stocks, maybe not as much. Alternative investments, NFTs, collectibles, watches. I mean, even the car market. Like, what world have we ever lived in where you can buy a supercar, drive it for 6 months, and then sell it for more money than you bought it for? I mean, it's nuts. And that is because they printed 40% of the world's money supply in the last 2 years. And where do you think that money went? It went into assets. So while they were saying the past 2 years on the mainstream media, no, there's no inflation, don't worry, etc., smart money realized what was happening and they were buying assets, right? They were buying assets. All of this increased money supply, it was going into assets, which was a smart move. Now the narrative has changed and the news is saying, hey, there's inflation, be scared. And obviously, what do people say They say that assets are a good hedge against inflation. Well, depends what kind of inflation, okay? So as I said, right now we are facing an 8.5% inflation rate, except once again, that's consumer price index. So as I said, that's sort of like day-to-day living costs, food, shoes, etc., etc. That does not include assets like housing, crypto, NFTs, art, like assets. So whatever that news is saying, do the opposite. Like that's literally the number one rule of investing, in my opinion. So while the whole world is screaming, there's inflation, obviously you're always taught like, assets are a good hedge against inflation. I believe the smart money, the very wealthy people, are selling. They are selling at the top of the market when it comes to assets. They are stacking cash, and then in 12, 18, 24, maybe even 36 months, they are buying those same assets at the bottom of the market while the news told you, hey, assets are a great hedge against inflation. I mean, yes, but the inflation that was going on the past 2 years, which is why I said for the past 2 years, they're like, no, inflation isn't here, it's transitory, all this crap. And then now the narrative is changing. The wealthy stay wealthy because whether it is a strong economy or a recession, they profit. And this is why I'm making this video for you. Because, for me, this is my first recession and I've played this out pretty well. I mean, the last 2 years I made well over 8 figures for my investments, right? The only thing, and as I said, this, I'm still young, I'm still learning. As I said, this is the first real recession that I've been through. The one mistake that I made was not evaluating with some of my assets when they topped. When I say with some of my assets, I mainly mean my crypto portfolio, and we're gonna get into that in just a second. But if I had done things correctly, and bear in mind, whatever, I still have a over 8-figure investment portfolio, I can still sleep okay at night, but I made mistakes, that's for sure. And I think that's the most important thing to, learn. And that's also why I'm making this video for you. So that way, you don't make the same mistakes that I did. Really smart money knows when times are good, rides the wave, and 6 months, a year before any, talks or anything remote to that of recession, they've already sold. Then 2 years later, 3 years later, they buy those exact same assets for pennies on the dollar. Or another strategy for the extremely wealthy is they just hold forever, right? You just never sell. And then when there's a recession, that's when they deploy all their cash. But anyways, long story short, 18 months ago when it was actually true, the cash was trash. Now towards the middle of 2022, cash is king. And I think there's going to be a lot of stuff on sale in the next year, 2 years. But let me get a little bit more specific because I know a lot of you guys are interested in my investment portfolio as to what I'm doing between my different asset classes, because each asset class acts totally different, right? Like obviously most assets, rise and fall in accordance with the general market, but some markets do behave different to others. Now, if you guys want to know what I'm doing with my crypto, basically Ethereum, I still have all of my same Ethereum. The rest of my portfolio stuff like AVAX, Solana, etc., all that stuff. Around a month ago, I started, I never thought I'd say these words, I started rolling all of that into Bitcoin. My portfolio is looking more and more Ethereum, Bitcoin heavy. I'm still holding a small percentage of alts. But yeah, long story short, right now, my portfolio the aim is to get a 50, on the crypto side of things, roughly around 50% Bitcoin, 40% Ethereum, 10% altcoins. That's in terms of the crypto side of things. Outside of that, right now, I'm not buying any crypto and I don't really plan on it for the next 3 months or so. Right now, basically, I am just accumulating cash in the form of stable coins. And obviously, that earns me, depending on the protocol, let's say anywhere from 8 to 12% on average, some higher, some less. Really just depends on the DeFi platform that you're using. So right now, I'm just stacking cash, accumulating interest on it, roughly around, let's just call it 10% a year. And I'm just waiting, right? And I'm not worried about inflation or anything like this because, as I said, I'm still earning yield on my cash, and the dollar is actually performing incredibly well on somewhat of a bull run at the moment. So it's actually not too scary for me to be holding USD. So yeah, that's pretty much the play. I think for 2022, the rest of 2022, we are most certainly in a bear market. 2023, we'll see what happens. As I said, crypto markets don't follow traditional markets one for one. And obviously there is a lot more volatility, but yeah, on my side. So yeah, my crypto portfolio, 50% Bitcoin, 40% Ethereum, and then 10% with some sort of top 10 alts that I still believe in. And then the rest is just cash. I'm basically just trying to stack up millions and millions of dollars worth of cash and deploy it in the next sort of 12 to 18 months. So yeah, that is what I'm doing with crypto. When it comes to NFTs, to be honest, I wouldn't be confident with 99% of projects. I think the only projects you should really feel comfortable with are, let's say, some of the top 5 blue chips. Obviously, as you guys know, I hold 3 Bored Apes, so I'm not too worried about that. Bored Apes, I think CryptoPunks, especially at the current floor price and how much it's dropped, I actually think, you know, you can't go wrong with those. You've got your Azukis, your Clone X's, sort of, you know, those sort of projects where in the NFT space, they're considered blue chip. I mean, to be honest, just my personal opinion, I would feel uncomfortable with anything outside of basically Bored Apes or CryptoPunks during a recession, just being honest. So that's that side of things. Or the projects where the utility is so good that it's not like people don't look at it as a flipping project or an investment or this, that. They just look at it as like, I paid this amount to get this amount of utility. So think about projects like Proof Collective. Obviously, not everyone can afford to spend $300,000 on a utility pass. So Proof Collective, I would feel very, very safe with. Another project that's a little cheaper, but still on the more premium side of things, a project called Dark Echelon by my boy Amir Hussein. Shout out to him. I think his project is sitting at like a 4.5 ETH floor at the moment. But once again, projects with incredible utility and incredible community that are just so bought in. And most importantly, a very, very small supply. That's very, very key. Obviously, another great one to look at is my own NFT project launching at the end of the month, Gents Croquet Club. We only have a 1,400 supply for that project, and we're the first project in history to hand select every single member who gets to mint. So there's still a little bit of time left. If you want to book in a discovery call, apply to get whitelist and mint that project. I know it's my own project, but with the amount of vetting that goes into every single person who's allowed to mint, I'd say pretty confidently it's going to be one of the best performances of 2022. So I'll leave that as a link in the description as well. The main thing when it comes to NFTs is just look at projects where even if, you know, the project dumps by 70, 80% during a recession because everything is dropping, would the holders still be super happy just because of the utility? So either that or just the ones that are just so mainstream and just such a cultural icon. Except for me, the only two that fall under that category are Bored Apes or CryptoPunks. I think those are safe, and I think the utility ones are safe. Next thing that I'm sure a lot of you guys might be interested are watches. As many of you guys know, I have a $3 million watch collection. Well, actually now it's, I don't know, maybe like 2.7 million or something like that. But what am I doing with my watch collection? Every watch I currently have in my collection, except for one, actually this RM, because they don't make it anymore, I got it at retail. So because I bought it at retail, now the watches I buy at retail, I will never sell because I have a lot of mutual respect with the brands. You know, we built great relationships over the years, you know, way before even the watch prices started going crazy like they were now. You know, I was buying even in 2019, as I said, building these relationships and stuff like that. So for me, I'm not selling any of my watches. Plus, because I bought them all at retail, like there's no way I'm ever going to lose money. But I know that most people don't have the relationships with the brands like I do. So if I was buying my watches at market prices, I would have sold a few months ago, actually. And in fact, I told many of my friends who had bought at market price 2 months ago, look, I don't see watch prices being higher in November than they are now. I will say watches are their own little world. And I think watches are going to hold up very, very well. They're not going to get as hit as, for example, crypto stocks. I mean, as hit as they already have been affected, or even potentially some of the real estate market. I think watches, especially on the high end of things, it's just a new normal, right? I think watches, people realize that they're great investments. They're a great way to park money. They're also a great way to travel the world. I mean, look, even when I go back to London, if I tried to take 10,000 pounds in cash, I would have to declare it. They would ask me tons of questions. It would just be a nightmare. But many times I literally have 3 watches in my watch roll, and that's £1 million right there. And they can't ask me any questions because it's just watches, right? So I think we're in a new era for watches. I think watches will hold up much better than some of the other investments. But nonetheless, let me put it this way. I wouldn't be buying any watches at the current market prices. As I said, I'm very blessed and fortunate to have the relationship with the brands, so I don't need to. But if I was, I wouldn't be, except I did get this RM because yeah, I just don't think the RM market's going to be as affected like the rest of the brands. Plus, it hasn't had the crazy run up in the past 6 months like, you know, AP and Patek has on some of their pieces. So with all that being said, what am I investing in? And the answer is nothing. Right now, I'm literally just stacking cash. I'm actually stacking a few $100,000 a month in cash, earning 10% interest from the stable coins, and I'm just waiting. Now, Q4 of this year or first half of next year, I'm going to be deploying millions and millions of dollars in order to buy a bunch of properties here in Dubai. I do want to see how the market is, especially considering the whole war that's going on. A lot of Russians have come here. It's brought up the price a lot. So I want to see how that whole situation plays out. But yeah, the plan is end of the year or, you know, first half of next year, you know, buy multiple properties in Dubai. They're not you know, you're not going to get crazy returns like you can, you know, in crypto, or even sometimes even watches or even cars or some of these other collectibles. But it's just, I believe it's nice to have some property in Dubai as a place where it really makes sense. And yeah, they treat landlords very well, unlike, you know, a place like the UK where it's terrible to be a homeowner there. So I'm going to be buying that. I'm going to be buying a bunch of crypto. Just remember, guys, the real millionaires, multi-millionaires, 9-figure people, they were buying crypto in the bear markets. That's really where the money is made, is in the bear markets. And I'm excited to buy a lot of crypto during the bear market. And just a few other things that I might look at is a car collection, starting to build a car collection when the prices come down. So yeah, sort of just like, I do like to have some of these alternative investments and stuff like that. Now, so my advice to you is stay cash heavy at the moment, stack cash, but don't just have it sitting there, right? Make sure that you're putting it into crypto stable coins. So that way you're earning, you know, 8%, 10%, you know, sometimes even 12% and can be higher. But let's just say on average, 10% interest on that, right? So you're actively fighting inflation and you're beating inflation. And it's sitting there earning passive interest. And then later on in the year, or even early half of next year, then start buying some crypto. And when it comes to crypto to buy, do not get into altcoins right now. And I don't think for the rest of the year either. I said, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Bitcoin, Ethereum, you know, I think those are really the only two that you should be looking at in bear markets. So start dollar cost averaging into crypto, buy some property if you can afford it. Maybe even start looking at alternative investments like watches or even cars. You do need to understand and learn those markets. You know, you can even pick up some NFTs at very cheap prices, and be very careful with that one because it's such a young market. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much a full breakdown of everything I'm doing in 2022 and 2023. So that way when I'm, you know, gray, old, and saggy. Well, actually, I don't think I'll be those things at 50. But point is, when I'm 50 years old, I can look back at this time and I can be like, wow, that was truly one of the most glorious times in my career, in my life. And that was really the thing that let me go from where I am right now to true generational wealth. And I hope and wish the same for you guys. So I hope you enjoyed this video.